Now we're going to kick things off with the first panel discussion, so I actually can't see because of the lights. I'm starting to mildly panic. Are any of my panelists in the room at all anywhere? If they are, could you come up to the front? Please, anyone? Oh, thank God. Okay. So, hi.
We're here.
Great to see you again. So great to see you. Bryce, great to see you again. Hey, John. Fantastic. Thanks for coming. Wally, great stuff. Please come and sit down. Make yourselves comfortable.
Look at there. It's a deep seat.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't like it when they have it in a line because I can't see everybody. So just, yeah, that's better. So what I thought I'd do is I'll just quickly get you to introduce yourselves to the audience because, you know, it says expert panel, but they don't always believe you. So if we just start at the far end, Wally, could you just explain who you are and why you're interested in this stuff?
Yes, absolutely. Hi, Wally Monarski with Bank of America. I've been with Bank of America about 6 years, running receivables and merchant services. I've been in the payments industry for acquiring for about 15 years, operating inside of Europe and across the globe.
John?
I'm John Crancis. I'm the founder of 𝗪𝗍 Financial and the CEO. I've been in payments for around about 15 years, and I have a background in engineering and law, which means I like to arbitrage one for the other to get an outcome.
Looking for those niches. Stefan?
Yeah, my name is Stefan 𝗪𝗆. Thanks for inviting me to the panel as a merchant, to merchant payment ecosystem. I'm with Otto Group, and that's a group of merchants mainly in Germany, but in Europe and the US as well. For example, Otto is the biggest brand. Crate & Barrel is part of the brand in the United States, Freeman Grattan in the UK, and Bonprix, we have a stake in About You that will be sold to Zalando. And I'm looking after all the framework agreements we have with payment providers and check all the news in the industry and try to consult the merchants we have in the group.
Thank you. Ugne?
Hi, my name is Ugne Buratina. I'm the group CEO for Payable. We call ourselves the Lego of the payment industry. So we have all the right pieces for seamless payment experience for our clients. And I myself have experience around 17, 18 years in payments. So I started quite young and happy to be here and put a few words together.
Thank you. Bryce?
And good morning, everyone. I'm Bryce, like the canyon in the US. Like my neighbor, I have about 18 years of experience in the payment business. I've been with MasterCard 18 years. And lastly, I was the country manager of France, and I was recently appointed as the new head of product for consumer in Europe.
So we wanted to sort of start the event with a conversation, like really looking forward, looking at the future of this nexus of merchants and payments. And I think there's a couple of different things which, I mean, everybody in the room, I'm sure, is expecting to see these things discussed. So I don't think it's controversial. But there are some technologies around now which are really going to change the way we're going. And I just wanted to get your feelings about, so let's start with AI. I mean, it's the obvious place to begin. We all understand that the AI revolution is a real revolution. It's not the usual sort of management consultant waffle. I mean, this really is a big thing that's going to change everything. But what is it going to change? How is it going to change things? Where are we going? You guys must have started looking at this already. So who wants to kick things off?
Probably from my perspective, AI is really helping a lot in specific industries or parts of the value chain. First thing, as probably everybody knows, is customer support. But we are not leveraging that for the chatbots, etc., because they don't work yet that good. Like, I don't know if you tested chatting with Klarna. I did a couple of times, didn't work well, but we use it for our manual agents to get a better view on the customer history, on the things they already chatted with different agents, and to then get better answers and prompts to be quicker to work on that.
I'm just very curious on that point, because that's where everybody's starting. So in the audience, just to help us out, could you put your hand up if you prefer talking to a person? Can you just see if anybody in the audience really cares about this stuff? And can you put your hand up if you prefer talking to bots?
But there's something in between as well, because people are not raising hands for the, so there must be a third option.
But when you talk to a person, you have to be nice to them, you know, because when you talk to a bot, you can get really angry because...
You get better feedback?
No, but I feel better because, like, the whole reason I'm calling up, you know, when you call up, you're only calling up because something's gone wrong, like, where's my stupid payment, or why is this bill wrong, or something. And I feel sorry for the people that I call up because, you know...
I will tell you from my perspective, because I'm sort of in between. I'm a proper introvert, so if I really don't have to talk to anybody, I would really love that. And if we come to the point where really I can do everything online without an interference of any human being, that's my ideal world, for certain things, obviously. For it to work really well, I think there's still a lot of training to do, and also from the business side, you really need to understand what the core problems of your clients are, right? And everything is programmable, and everything is basically can be built. But of course, you cannot take away the life, a real life experience with a human being if that is what you're after, right? And it's a lot to do about customer preferences. And I think it's important to remember that it's also to do not what the businesses want or not what the technology is doing, but also what the customer preference is at the end of the day.
John, you don't really like people. I mean, are you that bothered about...
You're right, I'm a bit of a curmudgeon. I don't like people at all. But the thing is that I don't know about chatbots in payments insofar as we as the payment provider using a chatbot. I mean, these are our customers out here. You know, I like to have relationship managers talking to our customers and understanding what the issues are and how we can better improve the product and the relationship. Now, if the merchant wants to use a chatbot, you know, to filter and so on, that's one thing. But we as a payment provider, I think it has to be human to human, understand the requirement, get over the concern. But that's not to say there's not a role for AI, right? So, you know, I think these large language models, you know, that are being developed or have been developed for, you know, chatbots, let's say, and, you know, the OpenAIs and ChatGPTs, they've got a role. But from my perspective, and this is going back to my undergraduate years as an engineer when I had to write an AI algorithm, and it's been around a long time, AI. We just didn't have the computational power to do anything with it. But, you know, I think the uses for AI in payments are probably more along the lines of fraud, anti-fraud, AML, and so on, which is a service that should be invisible to our merchants and delivered very effectively.
Can I just pull you up? Because I hate to be a horrible nerd about these things, but you just said in passing LLMs. So LLMs are the AIs that tell you to put glue in your pizza.
And I don't disagree.
So are these appropriate for regulated financial institutions?
I don't believe they are. I don't believe they are. Right, that's where I think I differ. So as I say, in terms of our interaction with our merchant, human to human, right? Because they've all got nuances, they've all got complexities. But there are other uses for AI, whether it's a large data model that maybe someone like Bank of America or MasterCard will bring on, or a more concise model that we're adapting that I'll speak about later.
I think there's too many conversations on large language models, and they've coined the term of small language models, and that's using the assets that any individual company has to help, you know, build and prime an AI bot. I think there's actually a mixture, and a term I've tried to coin on a couple of panels, which is medium language models. And that's the use of your own internal data with purposeful augmented external data that you control there. And if you're building an environment that has you know, secure information coming in and qualified information coming in, then your output should be better. You know, trolling the open internet probably doesn't give us the great experience that, you know, we're all looking for, and probably not at the right level for payments. We saw everybody's hand overwhelming, other than this gentleman here who wants to talk to a bot. Everybody wants to talk to a human, but I think if we also asked everybody in this room how many people are impatient, I think everybody would raise their hand too and say we're impatient because we want to get to the answer faster. So doing this in customer support models is great from an experience that you're having, because, you know, you may get to the answer faster, but if you don't get to the answer faster, you have to kick them out of that stream. We've only talked about that use case.
If AI worked properly, so let's put the LLM thing to one side for the moment. If AI worked properly, it would change your businesses more than you can possibly imagine. Is that a fair statement to make?
It is a fair statement, but you also mentioned about regulation. And for a financial institution that is regulated, there's a lot of pitfalls that can happen also giving full control on something that needs to be programmable and you don't have a real way to determine the outcome of it, right? Because we talked about that the difference in the information output can be significant enough to cause a lot of issues for the financial institution, right? So I think it's a balance of where do you really place the importance for that in the payments field, right? And I do agree with what we had also prior to getting on stage, is that we have been using AI for many years in payments, right? We modulate that for fraud prevention, for risk, right?
But
so,
that's kind of like the stuff that people out here are using is sort of machine learning stuff, right?
Correct,
so.
but it's still sort of the beginning of what we're getting into at the moment. But again, my point of view is that it's very difficult to give away that form of control for a regulated institution, right? So there have to be measures in place where we are 100% sure that what that component is doing is not harmful for the business or for our clients at the same time.
So if we just, I'm using AI as the example of a technology where we all understand it's going to make a big change to the business, but none of us are really sure what that change is going to be. That makes payments interesting again, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I agree with that sort of thing. And also, if your AI was working properly, then when I call up Bank of America to talk to customer support or whatever, I wouldn't be talking to Wally, I'd be talking to 𝗨𝗏𝗂𝗂. I mean, that's kind of what AI should be doing to change our lives. So I'm very positive.
I know what you're looking forward.
No, but I'm very positive. But the thing is, I personally think you're underestimating just how much it's going to change this business.
I'm not underestimating. I think none of us are underestimating. I think we all know that it's coming. I think what we're saying is that it has to be paced out to make sure that the infrastructure is protected and the end clients and the merchants and the financial institution is secure. I think it will transform for sure in many aspects. And what I see more of it is in the customer personalization side. And I think this is where we started off, right? So I think for merchants especially, it will be a huge change as well. So we just have to sort of pace it out and do it in a way that it's good for all of the infrastructure.
I think it's key that we ensure that we apply strong principles in how we manage the data that we're capturing, because we can do a ton of things, right? Around fraud, around customization of the checkout journey. I mean, we're doing amazing things already today with many merchants to customize how you're presenting goods and services online. So AI can be of great help, but you need to make sure you keep the trust of the end consumers, right? Because when you see that you're touching too deep on what you know about customers with AI, you start to have that negative reaction from consumers, right? So you need to be really careful and apply strong principles about what you do with the data. Otherwise, you're going to lose the trust. What I think is good is that we have those conversations now, right? Everybody is sort of aware that it can have a dramatic impact on how we do business today, and we have to have the conversation, right? In the past, like the social media kind of, big change to how we operate as a humankind, we didn't really talk about what could be the implication, right? And now we realize that it had a big impact on how our children behave, our relation with mobile device. And now it's actually good, right? We're having those conversations, right, as an industry. So I think we're going to have a big impact, but we're doing the right thing.
For a lot of the people in this room, though, they really are never going to be able to take advantage of this revolution, because it's you guys, and I'm pointing at Bank of America as well, it's you guys that have all the data. It doesn't matter how fancy their algorithms are. It's the people who've got the data who begin to sit in pole position, right, in this space. So that kind of implies to me that having strong strategies around data are really a way to keep a place in this space. Whether it's large language models or small language models or anything else, there are hordes of data which become the critical resource, a bit like rare earths or something.
I agree, it's a big resource, but it's also a huge responsibility.
Correct.
Right? And that's why we internally apply principle on how we manage data, because the last thing we want is people starting to lose trust in what we do. So I think that's an important
But I
point.
think also the ownership of data, I think, is one of the biggest issues in a way, right? Because ultimately, the end consumer doesn't own its own data. And I think we will see that shift later on, where basically where you provide that opportunity and where you have, the end user has the right to own a certain amount of data on themselves, they will be more inclined also maybe to openly dispose of that data. Because at the moment, the only winning parties, as you said, is basically the parties that hold the data, right? And there's a lot of discussions about of real ownership of data and what that enables for the companies and for the end users to do.
I think the type of data, though, matters, right? We're
Yeah,
talking
type
about a
of
couple
data,
different use cases, right? So we talked about customer support. We talked about fraud, transaction fraud. There's also programming. We haven't talked about programming AI. Programming for AI, everybody has access to that. It's open internet. There's open source code that's out there. But if you looked at the danger of AI and programming is if everybody uses the same source and there's a flaw in that source, then you have a global security event, right? You have SolarWinds, you have all these hack jobs that come out, and everybody's attacked at the same time. If you look at customer support, the data is really the answer to the customer's problem, which is really inherent to the person providing that, right? So how do you use my product? How do you solve this issue? How do you get resolution to the incidents that's happening there? Well, that's proprietary to the customer, to the brand, to the merchant, to whoever's providing that service. But then when you get to transactional flow, that's where it starts to change, right? And then, who doesn't really care about whether it works or not is the fraudsters, right? So when you talk about AI hallucination, you have about a 5% in general in a pristine AI model that you're going to have 5% errors, where the model comes back and says something that doesn't make any sense. Well, that's 500 basis points. We're talking about TRA at 6 basis points of fraud. So how can you get that wrong at 500 basis points? You can't, right? That doesn't work. But most models are actually in the 10 to 12%, 10 to 15% model, error ratio right now. Well, who else doesn't care about 10 to 15% fraud or error? Is fraudsters, right? So if you have AI that is being used against us in the industry, that's the first use case, is AI for fraud, not for fraud prevention, to enact fraud. So we have to combat that first. AI is being used against us first, and then we have to figure out how to respond.
So what you're saying is basically get out of consulting and get into fraud. I mean, that's what I'm hearing.
Always been the way, Dave.
No, it's very,
The
very,
returns
very,
are pretty good.
no, it's very good advice, Wally. Thank you very much.
Always been the way. But the other challenge here, of course, is the only ones that will actually have the data to develop the systems for or against are the big banks, are the systemics, or the schemes. A player like ourselves, I mean, we processed, 70 billion last year over our network, but it's a drop in the ocean compared to what these guys are doing. And unless you have access to a wide range of data to train your AI, you're not going to see the relevant patterns. And I just want to pick up on a couple of statements made here, which is an engineer bothered me. AI is not programmable. AI is trainable, right? So what we do is we take data and we look for patterns in the data, and then we say, if something new comes along, and it's neither this nor that, and it fits somewhere in between, then you give an answer like some of the nonsense you get from ChatGPT. But that's why you get that nonsense. If AI is programmable, it will give you the right answer every time, or no answer, right? That's a programmed or rules-based system. The problem with AI is you've got to have a lot of data, and it's got to be the right data, and you've got to train it, whether it's right or wrong.
So the implication of this point about the data is that we need to make the transition to true open banking, in fact, true open finance. Otherwise, we will never level the playing field. We'll never have real competition in the space unless we have open finance. Because without access to that data, nobody else can make a competitive product.
But how will we get Bank of America's data? So even if they're, pushing payments A to A or whatever they're doing, we will never see that data, right? That'll hit the central bank and...
But PSD3 or PSD4 or PSD5 or whatever we're up to, I don't know, PSDX. But PSDX, will have open finance, not just open banking, right? No. Okay. All right. Let's move on. So, all right. Let's pick a slightly less controversial topic. But again, I'm focusing on the future, not on now. Let's pick a less controversial topic to see what you think about this. The transition from payments to wallets. So, if you look at any of the statistics, globally, wallets already dominate in the payment space. We've all seen the same trends. We all know exactly what's happening. We have the European wallet coming along, I don't even know, is it next year or the year after or something like that? Does anybody in the audience know? Europe, does it ring any bells to anybody in the... Okay, well, I heard, even if no one else in the audience did, I heard that there's going to be a European digital identity wallet soon. We have the big tech wallets. We have retailers beginning to look at wallets. You have people like Grab and so on coming into space. So the next really competitive space is probably going to be the wallet rather than the individual payment instruments, right? So without giving away any sort of top secrets, what are you guys thinking about wallets at the moment?
I mean, clearly there are many wallets, right? I think one important point when we look at different wallets, it's about user experience and convenience and trust, right? People will use it if it's easy, convenient for them to use. If it's not, then it will not work, right? I think that's why we've seen that in many countries, many merchants and many consumers have adopted wallets to pay because it was easy and fast and simple. But again, you need to think about the trust, right? The moment something goes wrong, then people will lose trust and it's not going to work. So I think that's a big challenge or a big thing that you know, all these people that are in the wallet war have to think about.
I think there's a bit more to it than that, though, isn't there, Bryce? Because the wallet isn't just about payments. The reason why people move to wallets is because wallets are a good kind of orchestration mechanism for everything, not just payments, right?
Oh, for sure. And we've seen in other regions of the world, like in China, where you have those Alipay and or WeChat Pay that are part of a much broader ecosystem, right? Where you bring in identity to the mix. And I think in Europe, and I think that's what you're trying to refer to, we're trying to build that unique identity sort of wallet where people could use it for many use cases. We have example in markets, in countries where that's already happening. In my home country, in Belgium, we have one. So I think that's coming. But again, you need to create that trust so that people feel that it's okay to use those wallets that have all this data about that.
Don't consumers always go for convenience, though, over... We think about security and trust and all that.
Yes, we do. But generally, to reproduce an Alipay or a WeChat Pay in another market, we would have to all accept a monopoly of a customer. Because you can buy your insurance there. You can get a loan for a house. You can book a hotel. You can watch a movie. You can buy digital goods. It's like putting, you know, Amazon, Facebook, Airbnb, you know, and every other insurance company and so on together in a single app and controlled by a single entity for all your identity, all of your data that you put forth. It's probably not reproducible from a, you know, business perspective to be able to bring everybody forward. But with that, you have identity, which is critical. And we talked about data. Does anybody in this room feel like they own their own identity?
Well, depends what you mean by own.
Oh, well, do you own your data? Do you own the identity about yourself? Or has it been taken from you already? Do you own your biometrics? You may not own those in the future. They may have copies of your fingerprints or your iris as data breaches happen. And data breaches are continuously happening. That data will be stolen. You'll have quantum computing and other things that come through. So if the EU can provide a true authentication source to your identity, that is very powerful. That actually is a way to own your identity. Now, as long as it's not taken, you should be able to then do a lot of things with that. That's good. You should be able to transact. You should be able to have confidence. Is that achievable, though? I don't know.
You have a strategy
The question here in the end is the usability of this kind of products. And if you really put a digital identity into it to have a regular payment only, I think you don't need that. And if you're looking at all the wallets you have in the market right now, there are so many providers involved in the transaction. Like the wallet, it's the gateway, it's an acquirer, an issuer, it's the processing companies, it's anti-fraud. Like everybody in the room is involved in the wallet transaction. And the alternatives can be a simple account-to-account payment. And like our merchants, mainly in Europe, make use of Open Invoice for like 70 years now. And the transaction is very simple during checkout. The usability is very high. The trust is to the brand of the merchants. We ship the goods before payment. There is no strong customer authentication during checkout and nothing. It's frictionless, really frictionless. And then the payment is account to account in the end. And you don't need all the providers in between.
But I think it's also, just to add to this, which is all absolutely true, what has been said, but if you look into Europe in general, we have a very fragmented payment landscape, right? So as you mentioned, there's so many players, so many different layers for a really super app or a wallet or even a marketplace technically, right? Whatever we're talking about. I don't really see it as a feasible thing to achieve, at least in the current state that it is. And I think it's not only about user trust and about what the consumers want, which is very important. It has to be seamless and integrated and not complex. But it's also about other parties in the infrastructure wanting to do that move, right? So they have to be regulators. The move really takes, like, if you take example of Pix in Brazil, right? Why is it successful? Why? Because all of the participants were pushing for that change, right? For a single unified payment system, right? If that happens, then yes. But I don't think we are seeing that happening at the moment.
But there's a big difference between now and where this is going, because have you played around with Operator, the OpenAI Operator? So you can tell it, go book me a ski trip in Serbia for the long weekend. And it will go to the travel sites, it will go to the hotel booking sites, it knows how to press the buttons, it can read the menus, it can do everything, it will book everything until it gets to the payment. It can't make the payments. So it has to drop out and you have to go in and make the payments. But we're 6 months away, a year away from that AI just paying the other AI itself with you not in the loop. So when my AI has to pay the British Airways AI, the IHG Hotels AI, do you really think they're going to mess about with cards and 8583 and EMV and card rails and account to account and open finance and 222? Or are they just going to send some stable coins from one to the other? I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, are you guys being a little complacent about the magnitude of the changes that are coming?
If it's programmatic, does it matter? Because it's all fast and simple, whether you're adding a 16-digit number, a 24-digit number, or using a digital coin.
It matters to the people in the audience, because if my AI just sends the stable coins to your AI, there's 1,400 people out there who don't really have a lot to do in that kind of environment.
Well,
so.
The question...
No, argue with me. Don't just say yes, they'll all leave now.
It's not true, because you have fraud, you have identity, you have authentication. There's a lot of different scenarios that are in there, right? So you have to build that, and I think the first use case is identifying your AI bot. Like, what is the authentication? It's not a password. It's not, something it possibly is a biometric for a period of time, but eventually you have to step up the authentication to actually validate your technical AI bot is you. And it's not somebody else. Just
to be clear for the audience, I've never met you before in my life, and I genuinely didn't know you were going to say that. But it gives me the opportunity to say, I've just written a paper with MasterCard about KYA, KYC for agents, and I agree with you. It is an amazingly interesting topic, because once we do have digital identity for agents as well as people, you see an entirely new kind of commerce made possible. Because an awful lot of people, like the people in this room are interested in payments, but out there people aren't really. So if people just say, no, if I say, look, I need a new USB cable, can you go and get me one? I don't care where the AI gets it from. I don't care, but crucially, I don't care how it pays either. So,
yeah, but I see your point. But payments is not only about moving money from A to B.
It kind of
it's about trust as well. And if some AI agents interact and you book an airline flight and the airline goes bankrupt, you would like to have chargeback opportunities. And you need more than just moving the money via a stable coin, but you need this trust aspect as well. And you need the brand of merchants, for example, or you need the security aspects you have integrated into schemes and wallets like PayPal, stuff like that. So customer protection and security is very, very important.
Yeah, but the AI can make different decisions. I mean, John will back me up on this, I'm sure. Like for a normal person, like for me, if I go to book an airline ticket, And if I had to make the decision myself, what's the likelihood of this airline going bankrupt? Should I buy insurance against that? Like, that doesn't work for people. And that's why we have Section 75 and chargebacks. But for AIs, it's a different story.
We had a couple of bankruptcies within the airline industry, and I'm sure that all the customers that used open banking or prepayment were not happy afterwards. And you have to take that into account. Like for a couple of use cases, direct account-to-account payments do make a lot of sense. As I said in the beginning, if you have a trust relationship between the customer and the merchants, it's perfect, it's awesome. You can get rid of all the additional players and have a lean transaction. But if you have unknown participants in the transaction, I would stick to methods where you have an additional aspect of security.
You're changing a lot in that world, though. You're now doing your marketing changes, right? You're no longer marketing to people. You're marketing to your AI bot, right?
100%.
So you got to redeploy your marketing budget because you got to convince the AI bot to buy from that brand over another brand, and
Totally
you're no
agree.
longer, have a personalization purchase experience. You're talking to a bot on the other side. So many of the companies deploy bots to automate their chat service. Now you're talking about consumers that are automating their purchase experience, which now that's a whole different world to go to. So we all don't like talking to bots from a consumer to a merchant. How would merchants like talking to a bot instead of a consumer? Because you're going to have that inverse.
Can I just ask you, I have a feeling that actually, I mean, I was joking about fraud earlier on, but actually I think the kind of scenario Wally's just outlined actually makes fraud harder, because I think bots will be much harder to fool than people are. So we all read in the papers about, just a couple of weeks ago, there was the story about the French woman who thought that she was in a secret relationship with Brad Pitt. And she said, no, this is true, it's a true story. And so, she sent Brad Pitt $850,000. Like Brad Pitt needs $850,000. Like, but the thing is,
I think there's no help for people like that. I'm sorry.
Nothing
will do.
Like, you could secretly pretend to be Scarlett Johansson and tell, Scarlett Johansson has always had this thing about balding, overweight Englishmen, and now's the time. No, she probably does, to be honest. And I might fall for that. But my bot's not going to fall for that, because bots live in a world of digital signatures and certificates and cryptography and keys. Like, you can't fool a bot that you're Brad Pitt.
Well, you know which bot you would fool? A fraudulent bot. So a fraudulent bot with stolen payment credentials will absolutely buy your service.
But how would that work in practice? Because the bots, you just said about the KYA stuff for bots.
Well, if the bot is fraudulent to start with, and they have a bunch of stolen credentials, whether it's A to A or it's cards or whatever it is, it's going to buy whatever it wants to from everybody. So if you start soliciting that bot, the bots that will engage, that will purchase, will be fraudulent.
But what do you mean by fraudulent bot? Because when you go to the merchant and say, I'm Dave Birch, and I want to buy this USB cable or whatever it is, it won't work because the digital signatures won't match. The certificates aren't there.
But what if it's stolen? That's the next stage
of... I'll steal my private key, so...
Are you sure?
Are you sure?
With quantum computing, AI, digital ID, your biometrics are potentially taken. You look at Equifax, healthcare companies being hacked,
Bad news for EMV.
Governments being... That's why I said, do you own your identity? Do you truly own that?
I don't want to own my identity. I don't have... Most people aren't responsible enough for that. Gary and Tim will tell you, last week I lost my keys, this week I lost my sunglasses. I don't want to be in charge of my identity. I want a regulated financial institution to be in charge of that, somebody I can complain to, who has bots, so I can swear at them as well. So.
You need accountability, liability, and repudiation.
Right, exactly, and I don't have any of those things.
So we're coming back to the trust factor. Again, you want the AI, you want the chatbot, but you want it to be in a secure environment with a financial institution that has the responsibility and ability to...
That's not about trust, that's about regulation.
Regulation and trust, because you're not comfortable to do it on your own. You still want that extra layer of protection.
But if everybody has the data and it's open to everyone, then how do you create the security and the trust around it?
Okay, so we need to get onto the second topic now.
But that's already two.
We only have 2 minutes for that.
You guys are too interesting for this sort of thing. We should have seen this coming. Okay, we just have a couple of minutes left. So let's just go back to the original point of the thing, which was the original point of the discussion, which is about the future. What's going to have an impact in the future? So what have we not covered in the conversation which you think the audience should be focusing on about the future? You mentioned quantum in passing, and that's clearly you know how quantum computers work, right?
Oh, you use quantum, yes.
Yeah.
So Microsoft came out and said the year of quantum computing is now, right? And that's obviously a marketing against AI, right? They're trying to sell their chips as well. But if quantum computing is real, security, tokenization, encryption is cracked in a matter of seconds. Now you talk about quantum encryption and quantum tokenization that you have to combat with. So the question is, again, back to authentication and who you're doing business with. It's a personal experience. We talked about that. Not computers talking to computers, people transacting with people. And that's what commerce is. So when you start to, try to automate everything in our lives, you're pulling out the experiences that we enjoy. We do enjoy purchasing. We do enjoy interacting with brands. We do enjoy planning a trip. Maybe not a business trip, but you just want it to be done. But you're doing a personal trip, you want to have that personalization in there. When you throw quantum computing in there, it does challenge the security layers, right? And I think we don't know what that's going to bring as that comes out, and that's going to change the next layer that's out there, right? Any fraud model that's out there would be duped and compromised pretty quickly to get that through.
It says you guys are already preparing post-quantum encryption for...
Of course, we have to, right?
Yeah.
Because it's all about making sure that we are ahead of the bad guys. Right?
So we don't need to worry about that sort of thing.
I mean, we do have to worry and make sure that we are ready, right, for the next time. Right?
John, what haven't we covered that you think is important?
Look, most of what you've said scares the absolute bejesus out of me, because all I'm thinking is you've got this AI that is connected to all your identities, and where you're talking about a singular exploit of some singular lady sending 850 grand, I'm thinking of an AI exploiting your AIs on scale and going for it, right? So it's a bit more about that. I mean, how much do we want to automate? How much do we want to give away of our lives? And how much control are we going to retain? I must say I'm a staunch libertarian as well. I don't believe in digital identity, all those things, which is a bit of a position for an engineer. But I think if we give too much away, it's not just about the experience, but it's also about how we can be exploited. And there's a lot of bad actors out there.
Yeah, but not on the panel. So
no, we're all angels, but
I think we have been looking a little bit too far into the future. For us, regulation and making use of SEPA payments is the most important topic right now. So we have PSD3 upcoming, we have the Consumer Credit Directive, and sometimes regulation in Europe is making payments harder than it should be. And it would be a good idea to focus on the good rails we already have right now, not about stable coins, not about digital euro, but about the rails that we have here and that we are improving. You will talk about what MasterCard is doing soon. And this is the most interesting part for us, and where we try to have better customer experiences in the end, that we don't need the customer support and the AI, that the customer is happy without any friction and without any interaction.
Customers will never be happy. Okay.
For me, I think it's about excitement and also being scared, as it was already mentioned, because there are so many opportunities and so many interesting things, for the future to look at. But it really opens up a lot of pitfalls that we have to really look into, and we yet don't really know. And the unknown is very scary. So I think we have to take these baby steps in a way to make sure that we get there in the right way.
Right.
I agree with Stefan, right? I mean, we have to make things work today already, right? And there are loads and loads of challenges, but we cannot be complacent. And I agree with Wally. We need to think about what's coming next, making sure we anticipate that we don't allow the bad guys to be faster than us. And that's a race, right? And whatever the technology that comes next, we're going to have to be there, right?
Thank you very much, guys. I just want you all to know they had no idea what questions I was going to ask them. They gave you their honest opinions from a position of real professional expertise. I hope you appreciated that as much as I did. Thank you very much, everybody.